Last summer, I collected just over 1,100 gallons of rainwater using a setup that cost me less than $60 in materials, and that water carried my garden through a 7-week dry spell in July and August without a single trip to the spigot. My water bill dropped by nearly 40% during peak summer, and every tomato, pepper, and squash plant in my beds stayed green and productive, while my neighbor's garden across the fence was curling up and turning brown. For 20 years before that, I did what most of us do. I dragged hoses around, ran sprinklers on timers, watched my municipal water bill climb every June, and still lost plants to drought stress because I could never quite keep up. Then about 5 years ago, I was spending a long weekend near Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, visiting a friend whose property backs up to an Amish settlement. I walked past one of their kitchen gardens on a brutally dry afternoon, and the plants looked like they had just had a good soaking rain. Everything was lush, deep green, no wilting at all, but it had not rained in over 2 weeks. I asked my friend about it, and he pointed me toward the family's barn, where I saw a simple network of wooden troughs, downspouts, and large covered barrels quietly catching every drop of water that rolled off the roof. No pumps, no electricity, no fancy filtration, just gravity, common sense, and a system that had clearly been refined over generations. That image stuck with me, and it completely changed how I water my garden. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly how the Amish store rainwater and how you can build a similar system in your own backyard, even if you have never built anything more complicated than a raised bed. And stick with me to the end, because I will share a simple Amish trick for keeping stored rainwater clean and mosquito-free all season long that I've never heard anyone else talk about. I will be honest with you. For most of my gardening life, I treated water like it was infinite. I turned on the hose, I let it run, and I figured that was just the cost of growing food. When things got dry, I watered more. When the bill went up, I grumbled about it, but kept doing the same thing. I never once thought about catching the water that was literally falling on my roof and running straight into the storm drain. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. I was right there with you, but after spending time around those Amish gardens and seeing what they accomplished with nothing but collected rainwater, I realized I'd been ignoring the easiest, cheapest water source available to me. And once I understood their system, I could not believe I'd waited so long. Here is what I learned about why the Amish take rainwater so seriously. In a typical Amish household, you might have 8, 10, sometimes 12 people sitting down at the table every night. That food has to come from somewhere, and most of it comes from the garden. These are not hobby gardeners planting a few tomato cages for fun. They are feeding large families from limited acreage, and every square foot of that garden has to produce. They cannot afford to lose a crop to drought, and most Amish settlements are not connected to municipal water systems. There is no hose bib on the side of the barn hooked up to city water, so they had to figure out how to capture, store, and deliver water using nothing but gravity, simple materials, and careful planning. There is a practical concept that runs through Amish farming I have heard described as waste nothing that is given to you. Rain falls on your roof whether you catch it or not. Letting it run off into the ground unused when your garden is 30 feet away needing water, that is waste. And waste in an Amish community that depends on what it grows is simply not acceptable. That is not romantic philosophy. That is survival math. Now let me walk you through the system, starting from the roof and working all the way to your garden beds. The first thing you need to understand is that your roof is already a rainwater collection surface, and it is probably a lot more productive than you think. Here is the math, and this is what convinced me to actually start building. For every 1 inch of rainfall, 1,000 square feet of roof area produces approximately 620 gallons of water. Most houses have at least 1,500 to 2,000 square feet of roof. That means a single 1-inch rainstorm can yield over 1,000 gallons. Even a modest garden shed with 200 square feet of roof will give you around 120 gallons from one good rain. The Amish use every roof they have: the barn, the house, the chicken coop, the tool shed. If it has a roof and a gutter, it is collecting water. So here's what to do first. Walk around your property and identify every roof surface that has gutters or could have gutters added. Pick the one closest to your garden, as your starting point. If you do not have gutters on that structure, you can install a simple half-round gutter along the low edge of the roof for under $20 in materials. Most hardware stores carry 10-foot sections of vinyl gutter that are easy to cut and mount with basic brackets. You want the gutter to slope gently, about a 1/4 inch drop for every 4 feet of length, so water flows toward your downspout location. If you are in zones 3 through 5, where you get heavy snow loads, use metal gutters instead of vinyl. They hold up much better under the weight of ice and snow melt in late winter and early spring. Now here is where the actual collection starts, and this is the part most people overcomplicate. The Amish keep it simple, and so should you. At the bottom of your downspout, you're going to place a collection barrel. A standard rain barrel holds about 55 gallons, and you can buy food-grade plastic barrels at farm supply stores or online for $15 to $30 each. The Amish often use old wooden barrels, but food-grade plastic works just as well and lasts longer in most climates. You want to set your barrel on a platform of concrete blocks or a sturdy wooden stand that raises it at least 12 to 18 inches off the ground. This is critical, and here is why. The Amish deliver water to their gardens entirely by gravity. There are no electric pumps. If your barrel is sitting flat on the ground, you will not have enough water pressure to fill a watering can from the spigot at the bottom, let alone run a soaker hose. Every inch of elevation you add translates to roughly 0.43 pounds per square inch of water pressure. At 18 inches of elevation, you get enough gentle pressure to slowly feed a soaker hose laid along a garden row within about 30 feet. That is exactly how the Amish do it, and it works beautifully for raised beds and smaller garden plots. Install a brass spigot about 2 inches up from the bottom of the barrel, not at the very bottom, because you want sediment to settle below the spigot line. Drill a hole, thread the spigot through with a rubber washer on each side, and tighten it down. This takes about 5 minutes and one simple hole. Saw bit at the top of the barrel where the downspout feeds in, you need a screen. This is not optional. A piece of aluminum window screen secured over the opening with a hose clamp or bungee cord keeps leaves, roof grit, and debris out of your water. The Amish I observed in Lancaster County use a double layer of cheesecloth stretched over the barrel opening, held in place with a wooden frame that lifts right off for cleaning. Either approach works. The key is that nothing gets into that barrel except water. Now that your first barrel is set up, here is where the capacity really starts to build. And this is the part that surprised me most about the Amish approach. 55 gallons sounds like a lot, but a single heavy rainstorm can fill that barrel in under 10 minutes, and the rest overflows and is lost. The Amish solve this by linking multiple barrels together in a daisy chain. Here is exactly how to do it. Near the top of your first barrel, about 3 inches below the rim, drill a hole and install a bulkhead fitting, which is just a threaded connector that creates a watertight pass-through. Run a short length of garden hose or 3/4 inch PVC pipe from that fitting to a matching fitting at the same height on your second barrel. When the first barrel fills to that level, water automatically flows into the second barrel. You can chain 3, 4, even 6 barrels together this way. I currently run 4 barrels daisy chained off my garage downspout, giving me 220 gallons of storage from a single roof line. The Amish families I visited typically had 6 to 8 barrels connected behind their main barn, holding somewhere around 330 to 440 gallons total. During a good rainy week in spring, they fill the entire system and have enough stored water to carry a large kitchen garden through 2 to 3 weeks of dry weather. If you are in zones 7 through 9, where summer droughts can stretch longer, consider adding more barrels or upgrading to a 275-gallon intermediate bulk container, sometimes called an IBC tote. You can find used food-grade IBC totes for $30 to $50. One tote replaces 5 standard barrels and takes up less space, mounted on a platform 24 inches high for better gravity pressure. If you are picking up what I am putting down and you want more of these practical deep dives into traditional growing methods, I put together something called the 30-day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It is a complete guide available at backyardbuildbooks.com that walks you through 5 defenses fence layers, a 4-bed rotation system, and the morning walk concept I learned from my Amish neighbors, all designed to eliminate garden pests without chemicals. You can scan the QR code on screen right now or click the link in the description. It is the same kind of practical, time-tested wisdom we are talking about today, just applied to pest control instead of water. All right, let us keep going. Now that you have collection and storage figured out, here is where the growing really benefits, because how you deliver that stored water to your plants matters just as much as how you collect it. This is where the Amish approach looks completely different from the way most of us water. The conventional method is to stand at the end of a row with a hose and spray water over the tops of your plants, or to set up an overhead sprinkler and let it run for 30 minutes. I did this for years. It feels productive, but a huge amount of that water never reaches the root zone. It lands on leaves, evaporates in the sun, or runs off the surface before it soaks in. The Amish deliver water, low and slow, directly to the soil at the base of each plant. Here's the simplest way to replicate this. Attach a soaker hose to the spigot on your rain barrel and run it along the base of your garden rows. Lay it right on the soil surface, not on top of mulch, and snake it so it passes within 2 to 3 inches of the stem of every plant. A standard 25-foot soaker hose works well for 1 or 2 raised beds. Open the barrel spigot about halfway, not full blast, and let it drip slowly for 30 to 45 minutes. You want the soil to be moist to a depth of about 6 inches, which you can check by pushing your finger into the soil after watering. It should feel like a wrung out sponge at that depth, damp but not soggy. If you do not have a soaker hose, the Amish method I saw most often in Lancaster County was even simpler. They filled watering cans from the barrel spigot and poured water directly at the base of each plant, slowly letting it soak in rather than puddle. And run. 1 gallon per plant for tomatoes and peppers, about half a gallon for smaller plants like herbs and lettuce. They water in the early morning before 7 if possible, so the soil absorbs the moisture before the heat of the day drives evaporation. This single change, watering low and early instead of overhead and midday, can reduce your water usage by 30 to 40% while actually getting more moisture to the roots. I tracked this in my own garden 2 summers ago and was genuinely surprised by the difference number it be for gardeners in zones 8 and 9 where summer temperatures regularly hit 95 degrees or higher. Consider adding a 2 to 3 inch layer of straw mulch over your soaker hose after laying it down. The mulch reduces surface evaporation dramatically and keeps the soil cooler, which means your stored rainwater stretches further between refills. This next part is about timing, and it is something the Amish understand intuitively that took me years to figure out. You do not want to start collecting rainwater in June when the drought hits. You want your system full and ready before the dry season begins. The Amish start their collection in early spring as soon as the snow melts and the spring rains begin. In zones 4 through 6, that usually means late March or early April. In zones 7 through 9, you might start as early as February. The goal is to have every barrel completely full by the time your last frost date passes and your main garden goes in. Here is why this matters so much. Spring rain in most parts of the country is abundant and reliable. A typical April in the mid-Atlantic or Midwest might bring 3 to 4 inches of rain spread across a dozen storms. That is more than enough to fill a 4-barrel system multiple times over. If you wait until July to start worrying about water, you have missed the easiest collection window of the year, and now you are trying to catch summer thunderstorms that are intense. The Amish also rotate their stored water. They do not let water sit in barrels for months. They use from the oldest barrel first and let the newest rainfall fill the most recently emptied barrel. This keeps the water fresher, reduces the chance of algae growth, and means you always have the maximum volume available when a dry stretch hits. Label your barrels 1 through 4, or however many you have, and always draw from number 1 first. Once your barrels are full and your delivery system is in place, the last piece of the system is protecting that stored water from the 2 biggest enemies, evaporation and contamination. Every barrel must have a secure lid or cover, not just a screen on top, but a full lid that blocks sunlight. Sunlight hitting standing water promotes algae growth, and algae will clog your spigot and soaker hose within weeks. The Amish use solid wooden lids with just a small screened opening where the downspout feeds in. You can achieve the same thing with a fitted plastic lid or even a piece of plywood cut to sit snugly on top of the barrel with a notch cut for the downspout. Keep your barrels in a shaded location if possible. The north side of a building is ideal because it gets the least direct sun. If shade is not available, painting your barrels a light color white or light gray reflects heat and keeps the water temperature lower, which slows algae and bacterial growth. In zones 8 and 9, this is especially important because barrel water can reach temperatures of 90 degrees or higher in direct summer sun, which is actually warm enough to stress plant roots when you water with it. Here are some patterns I've noticed over the years. Habits that most of us fall into that the Amish approach handles differently. The first pattern is only thinking about water when it stops raining. I did this for decades. Rain was falling, so watering was not on my mind. The Amish treat every rainstorm as a harvest opportunity. When it rains, they are not just happy. Their garden is getting watered. They are filling barrels for the dry days ahead. That shift in thinking from passive to active is the single biggest change you can make. The second pattern is watering on a schedule instead of by observation. Most of us set a timer or pick a routine every other day, 3 times a week, whatever feels right. The Amish water based on what the soil tells them. They push a finger into the ground. If it is dry 2 inches down, they water. If it is still moist, they wait. This sounds simple, but it prevents both overwatering and underwatering, which are the 2 most common causes of plant stress in home gardens. I started checking soil moisture by hand 3 seasons ago, and I am convinced I was overwatering for at least 15 years before that. The third pattern is relying entirely on municipal water for the garden. City water is treated with chlorine, and in many areas chloramine, which does not evaporate as easily. These chemicals are not harmful to plants in small amounts, but they do suppress beneficial soil microbes over time. Rainwater is naturally soft, slightly acidic, usually around a pH of 5.6 to 6.2, and contains small amounts of dissolved nitrogen from the atmosphere. Plants genuinely respond better to rainwater than treated tap water. The Amish have always known this through observation. Modern soil science now confirms it. The fourth pattern is giving up on water collection because you think you need a massive cistern or an expensive setup. The Amish system I described today, 4 55-gallon barrels, basic gutters, and a soaker hose can be built for under $100 and set up in a single afternoon. You do not need a 1,000-gallon underground tank to make a real difference. 220 gallons of stored rainwater delivered slowly at the base of your plants can carry a moderate-sized garden through 3 weeks of drought. Start small and expand as you see the results. Now here's the technique I promised you at the beginning, and it is something I picked up from an Amish family in Lancaster County that I have never seen in any gardening book or video. The number one complaint people have about rain barrels is mosquitoes. Standing water breeds mosquitoes, and nobody wants to create a mosquito nursery in their backyard. Most guides tell you to add a few drops of cooking oil to the water surface or use mosquito dunks, which are small biological larvicide tablets. Those work fine, but the Amish family I learned from does something different that solves 2 problems at once. They drop a small piece of copper about 2 inches by 2 inches into each barrel. An old copper pipe fitting, a piece of copper flashing, or even a handful of pre-1982 pennies, which are mostly copper. Copper ions leach into the water very slowly and are toxic to mosquito larvae at extremely low concentrations, far below anything that would affect your plants or soil. University research out of the University of Florida has confirmed that small amounts of copper in standing water effectively prevent mosquito larvae from developing. The Amish family told me they have been doing this for as long as they can remember, and they have never had a mosquito problem with their barrels. I've been using copper pieces in my barrels for 3 seasons now, and I can confirm it works. No mosquito larvae, no dunks, no oil film on the water, and my plants have shown 0 negative effects. 1 small piece of copper per barrel replaced once a year, and the problem simply goes away. It costs almost nothing, it involves no chemicals, and it works quietly in the background all season long. That is the kind of practical, quiet wisdom that does not make headlines, but solves real problems. Everything I've shared with you today, the collection, the storage, the gravity delivery, and the copper trick is just one piece of how Traditional growers approach the garden as a whole system. If you want to go deeper into these methods, I put together the 30-day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, available at backyardbuildbooks.com. Inside, you will find the 5 defense layers that Amish gardeners build around their crops. A complete 4-bed rotation plan that breaks pest and disease cycles naturally, and the morning walk method that catches problems before they start. It is designed for experienced gardeners who are ready to stop fighting their garden and start working with it. Scan the QR code on screen or check the link in the description. That is what I have learned from my Amish neighbors about keeping a garden green through the hottest, driest weeks of summer, using nothing but the rain that falls on your roof and a little bit of planning. If you try any of this, I would love to hear how it goes. Drop a comment and tell me what you are working with, how many barrels you set up, what your roof size is, whatever's on your mind. And if you want more of these practical deep dives into time-tested growing methods, hit subscribe. Thanks for spending time with me today. I will see you in the next one.